Now, the rest of the story. It had all been planned and scheduled for Tuesday, May 24, 1949. Bob would go on the air on his own television program and make what he believed was a remarkable revelation. And this is the story he told. During our American war between the states, a Union Army captain was belly down in a battlefield trench. As the gunfire diminished, he heard the moaning of a wounded Confederate soldier. The Northern captain crawled out of the trench, dragged the hurting Southern soldier back to safety, and then the captain discovered the enemy soldier was only a boy, and the boy was the captain's own son. Now, I'm still quoting the story which Bob told on his television program. The captain went through his son's pockets, and he found a hand-scrawled piece of sheet music, something the boy himself had composed. And the grieving Union officer then ordered that this music must be played at his son's burial, and it was by a lone bugler. And today we remember that tune as Taps. Da-da-da, da-da-da. Well, when Bob had finished telling his story, the program concluded with Taps, played by a bugler silhouetted against a background of drifting clouds, and the effect was most dramatic. The irony was yet to be realized. For all during that television show, host Bob had felt ill. He had even blacked out at one point, and a co-star had had to take over. Bob got the message. He'd been suffering from hypertension for some time, and now the stress was catching up with him. He would check into the hospital as soon as possible, and he did on Thursday. By Friday, he was dead of a heart attack. This was 72 hours after telling his television audience the story of Taps, the bye-bye bugle call of all time. He, Bob, was on the way to his own funeral. Now, you remember Bob as Robert L. Ripley. And the media feature he created, still going strong after more than 30 years after his death, is Ripley's Believe It or Not. But this is the rest of the story. The explanation he gave on his final television program for the origin of the bugle called Taps, that explanation was entirely untrue. Now, Taps had been composed during the Uncivil War, but not the way Bob Ripley had said. It was written by Union General Daniel Butterfield, who was also Chief of Staff of the Army of the Potomac in the battles of Chancellorsville and Gettysburg. General Butterfield wrote that now world-famous four-tone tune in 1862 on the back of a torn envelope he'd been carrying around in his pocket. He had sought to compose a simple, expressive bugle call. He whistled it to his bugler, and buglers have been repeating it ever since, and that's the truth about Taps. Neither dramatic nor ironic, but that's the way it was. Robert Ripley's admirers might have been disappointed in that story, so he told them another, a story about an imaginary Union Army captain and his equally fictitious Confederate soldier son, and he told them a whopper. He didn't lie now. No. Throughout his colorful career of storytelling, Bob Ripley covered himself, even though some of his information was entirely unsubstantiated, even though many of his amazing tales were patently false. He covered himself. He protected his integrity with a recurring tagline that you never really understood before right now. For Robert Ripley never, ever said, "Believe it." He always said, "Believe it or not." And now you know the rest of the story.